Good morning everyone. Today we are going to see the 10th chapter of our class 8 science textbook, that is reaching the age of adolescence. In the previous chapter, in chapter 9, we have discussed about the reproduction in animals, how an animal or human being reproduces. In this chapter, we are going to discuss how an individual becomes capable of reproducing. So what are the changes that take place, and when these changes take place, that makes a person capable of reproduction. So let's start today's session. First we will discuss adolescence. Adolescence is actually the time period between the childhood and the adulthood. So that time period where a child undergoes changes to become an adult, that is called adolescence. So here you can see the definition: the period of life in which a boy or a girl undergoes mentally, emotionally as well as physical changes leading to sexual maturity. That means that person after childhood will undergo various changes in their body, in their intellectual, then psychological changes will take place. Then it will ultimately lead to sexual maturity. That means the person will become adult. So this adolescence starts from the age of, generally from the age of 11 to 12 and lasts up to the age of 18 to 19 years. And this adolescence period is also known as teenagers, as usually 13, 14, 15, all these teen years is included in adolescence. They are also called teenagers. And the boy or a girl undergoing adolescence are called adolescent. So adolescent and teenagers are same thing, and they undergo a period of time where they will experience physical changes, that means bodily changes, emotional changes, intellectual changes, and they will gain various experiences resulting to their maturity is known as adolescence. Next is puberty. Puberty is actually the stage during which the immature reproductive system in boys and girls matures and become capable of reproduction. So we can say puberty mainly relates to changes in their physical structures. Bodily changes mainly takes place in the puberty, and puberty is actually the starting point of adolescence. So puberty only deals with physical changes that take place in a boy or a girl. But when we say adolescence, adolescence included the whole sphere, various aspects of changes like physical as well as social, psychological, emotional, all. You can say that this is the time period of life of adolescence from 11 to 12 years of age, lasting up to 18 to 19. So puberty will take place in the beginning of the adolescence. Sometimes it also happens that puberty starts before the adolescence. Maybe by the age of 8 or 9, the child starts to experience physical changes. Then various physical changes the child will experience, and ultimately the child will become capable of reproduction. So this whole physical changes is called puberty. But the changes doesn't stop only at the physical changes. It includes various spheres like emotional, mental and all. So these all comprises the adolescent period. I hope you understood the difference between adolescence as well as puberty. Adolescence is in greater meaning. You can understand. Puberty comes under the period of adolescence. Next, let's discuss what are the changes that take place during puberty. So first of all, increase in height. The child experiences a growth in its height. Sometimes you may see a sudden spurt of growth also in the children. Within the span of 1 year, they may show great increase in their height. Sometimes what happens, the bones of their hands grow before the bones of their legs. That means they may have elongated arms, but no worry. After some time, all the proportion of the body catches up, and you can say the growth of rate becomes same. So the child will experience growth in height. That means their bones will grow, which leads to their increase in height. Next is change in body shape. So most of the time when a child undergoes puberty, in the boys, they will experience that their shoulders become broader. They will start to have more broader shoulders, and in the girls, most commonly you can see is their widening of their hips. The hips area becomes broader in the girls, while in the boys the shoulders become broad. Then voice change. This voice change especially takes place in the boys. You may have noticed that when a boy undergoes puberty or undergoes this period of adolescence, they start to have a hoarse voice. That means they start developing Adam's apple. Our voice box or larynx in a small child, it is not particularly visible. You will not be able to see it clearly, but when the boys undergoes puberty changes, this Adam's apple, here you might have seen a protrusion here, a protruding structure you will see, that is their voice box, which enlarges and is known as Adam's apple. This is due to the muscles in their voice box, they get swell up, which makes the voice of the boys deepen or hoarse even. Next is increased activity of sweat and sebaceous gland. Sebaceous glands means the oil glands, the glands which produces oil. Sweat gland and sebaceous gland are mainly present on our skin. So when a child undergoes this puberty, they will experience that their sebaceous gland and sweat gland are functioning very profusely. That means profusely they will start producing oil, they will feel their skin becoming oily, or they will sweat too much. So these are nothing but related to the puberty changes that they are undergoing. That is one of the reasons why the children by the age of these teenagers. So what happens is, due to this profusely activity of sweat and sebaceous gland, this starts producing oil in their faces, and that may be the reason for the pimple that they suffer from. Next is development of sex organs. The sex organs, like the penis in the boys, testes, or in the girls it may be the ovary, vagina, all these are called primary sexual characters or primary sex organs. They are present in the individual, in the child by birth, but the thing is, they are present but they are not developed completely. So when a child is undergoing puberty, this primary sexual organs or characteristics, they starts to develop, and they develop completely by the age of this puberty changes. Next is reaching mental, intellectual and emotional maturity. This age, this adolescence period can also be called as the period of stress and storm. That means the child undergoes various changes which make them self-conscious, which make them highly emotional, and the hormonal changes taking place in their body makes them have frequent mood swings. So the child will undergo various situations where they will experience various changes in their body around them, and it may lead to their emotional, intellectual and mental maturity, which will make the child mature and they start to think in various spheres. Next is development of secondary sexual characters. Secondary sexual characters are those characters that help us to differentiate boys from girls. By looking itself, we can say that this is a boy and this is a girl. So such characteristics are called secondary sexual characteristics. Some examples I have written here. In boys, we can observe growth of facial, pubic as well as underarm hair. So facial hair means the mustache or the beard. So the boy starts developing hairs in various parts. Also deepening of their voice, as the muscles of their voice box or larynx swell up, it makes their voice very deep. So these are some of the secondary sexual characters in the boys, while in the girls we can see development of their breast as well as growth of facial hair, pubic hair and underarm hair. So facial hair is not very prominent in the girls, but in some cases you will observe facial hair also. But pubic and underarm hair also grow in the females. So these are some of the secondary sexual characters that help us to differentiate between a girl and a boy. Here we have discussed about the period of adolescence, then puberty, then the various changes taking place in the puberty phase. We have discussed about adolescence, puberty and the various changes taking place during the puberty and adolescence period. In this chapter, we are going to discuss how these changes are brought about. So mainly these changes are brought about by the effects of hormones. What are hormones? Hormones are chemical substances secreted by endocrine glands. Hormones are chemicals. They are secreted inside our body and this leads to various changes taking place in our body. So hormones are secreted by endocrine glands. In our body there are two types of glands, endocrine and exocrine glands. Endocrine glands are those glands which pour their secretion directly into our bloodstream. The meaning of endo is internal or within or inside. That means they directly pour their secretion, the hormones, inside the bloodstream into our blood vessels. While another type of glands are called exocrine glands. The meaning of exo is outside. So these exocrine glands, they secrete their secretions into a duct, into a pipe-like, duct-like structure or tube structure, and then through that it goes in our blood. That is why endocrine glands are also known as ductless glands, as they do not have any ducts. Their secretion directly goes into the blood. While exocrine glands are duct glands, they have duct and their secretion goes into the duct and then from the duct into our blood system or various parts of the body. Next topic is endocrine glands secrete hormones. So the main hormones taking part in this puberty and adolescence period are male hormones that are secreted in the males and female hormones that are secreted into the females. So male hormone is known as testosterone. The name of the male hormone is testosterone, and testosterone is produced by the testes. Here you pay attention. I have written the spelling T-E-S-T-E-S. This is the plural of testes, T-E-S-T-I-S. If I write T-I-S, testes is singular form. If I write T-E-S, testes is the plural form. The female hormone produced in the body of females is estrogen, which is produced by the ovary. So the male hormone is testosterone, produced by the gland or gonad, testes. Female hormone is estrogen, produced by the female, we can say female gonad, or it is also a gland called ovary. You should remember the name of these two hormones. And in males, testosterone causes all the bodily changes taking place in their body, like production of facial hair, growth of facial hair, then deepening of their voice. While in the female, all the changes taking place are with the help of female hormone, that is estrogen produced by the female gonad, that is ovary. Next topic we will see is target site. Target sites are those tissues or organs where the hormone goes and acts. So for example, if this testes and testosterone and estrogen produced, they go to a particular site. For example, they go to the cells in our face for facial growth, facial hair growth, then the target site will be the cells of the face. If the estrogen goes into the breast area for the breast development, then that will be the target site. So the target site are those tissues or organs on which the hormone goes and acts upon. Here we will see how the sequence take place, how this series of hormones, they bring about changes. First of all, you should remember that just behind this part of our brain, below the brain, one structure is there like this. This upper part is the hypothalamus. Hypothalamus is one of the endocrine glands, and the hypothalamus is also known as the master gland. Why? Because this hypothalamus controls all the other glands in our body. That is why it is known as the master gland. So hypothalamus is present here, and this lower part, this part and this part are pituitary gland. Our pituitary gland is divided into two parts, anterior pituitary and posterior pituitary. This is anterior pituitary gland and this is posterior pituitary gland. Anterior means forward or in the front, posterior means at the back. So hypothalamus secretes hormone which goes to pituitary gland. Then in response to the hormone sent by the hypothalamus, pituitary again releases its own hormone, mainly by the anterior pituitary. Now this anterior pituitary gland releases its hormone that goes to testes and ovary. In this case, hypothalamus is secreting hormone and it is going and acting upon pituitary gland. So in this case, in these two steps, pituitary gland is the target site. Then pituitary gland is releasing its hormone that goes to testis and ovary. So in this step, testis and ovary is the target site. When the pituitary gland's hormone reaches testis in the male and ovary in the female, they releases their own hormones. Testis start to releasing testosterone and ovary releases estrogen. So these hormones go to the specific target site. Wherever they have to reach and bring changes, this testosterone and estrogen will go in the respective areas and they bring about changes. They stimulate the changes and slowly the changes appear. In the case of male, as I have already mentioned, depending on the voice, growth of facial, pubic as well as underarm hair, and in the female, development of the breast, then development of milk, we can say glands that produce milk starts developing inside the breast, then growth of various hairs, pubic hair, underarm hair, like this. So this is the schematic diagram how the hormones function to bring about the changes during the puberty. Next topic we will see is reproductive phase of life in humans. Like we know that at puberty the bodily changes start where a male and a female reaches their sexual maturity. But what happens after that? What is their reproductive phase? So in males, their reproductive phase starts at the time of puberty and it lasts until death. That means from the start, the reproductive phase in males begins at puberty. From the time they reach puberty, they are able to reproduce, and until death they are capable of reproducing. That means they produce sperm. Until that, they are capable of producing sperm. But in females, they also start at the time of puberty, but it lasts up to the age of 45 to 50 years only. It doesn't last whole of their life. In males, from puberty until their death, but in females, it starts at the puberty, but reproductive phase ends by the age of 45 to 50 years in the females. Next topic we will see is menstrual cycle. In the previous chapter, we have discussed how the fertilization takes place. The female egg or ovum is released from the ovary. It will be released from the ovary, and to mature, for one egg cell to mature, it takes generally about 28 to 30 days of time in general. And after this, the egg matures and released from one of the ovaries. From one of the ovary, one egg will be released in a month or once every 28 to 30 days. So when this will be released, what happens? If sperm is available, then here their fertilization takes place. That means the egg and the sperm will mix together and become a single cell called zygote. This zygote will come here, and in this part, this endometrium or inner lining of the uterus, here it will implant. So this we have learned in the previous chapter. But what happens if there is no fertilization? That we will discuss here. If, let's say, the egg is released but there is no sperm available or fertilization could not take place. When the egg is maturing here, when the egg is undergoing the process of maturation, then the uterus prepares itself. In case fertilization is there, it has to accept the zygote. It has to accept the fertilized egg by the process of implantation. So what happens? The uterus, when the egg development takes place in the ovary, the uterus also prepares itself. How it prepares itself? New lining of cells develop. New cells will develop and blood vessels will form in the uterus, making this uterine wall very thick. Earlier it was thin, but when the maturation of egg is taking place, this uterus also makes new blood vessels and uterine tissues. So new tissues, blood vessels make this endometrium, this inner wall of the uterus very thick and spongy, so that the fertilized egg can easily implant in it. When the egg is released, after 28 to 30 days, egg is released and egg is coming here, but no fertilization take place. Then if no fertilization is there, simply egg will come here and it will not implant. It will directly flow away out of the female body. Then if there is no implantation, what is the purpose of this newly formed tissues and blood vessels? These newly formed tissues and blood vessels were made so that if fertilization takes place, then they could accept the fertilized ovum or fertilized egg and provide nutrition to it. But no fertilization take place, egg will not implant and directly go away. That is why they now don't have any purpose. That is why all this will break down. They will break down, and in the form of blood and tissues, they will be released from the female body through vagina. So this flow of blood, tissues and egg out of the female body is called menstruation. Okay, this is called menstruation, and this whole cycle where the egg undergoes development, then the uterus prepares itself, and then if no fertilization, shedding off of these newly formed tissues and blood vessels, then again for development of new egg, and again redevelopment or regrowth of these tissues and cells and blood vessels. This whole process is called menstrual cycle. This whole process is called menstrual cycle, and menstruation is the discharge or flow of the blood vessels and tissues through vagina. That is called menstruation. It is also known as period. Now, next we will see is menarche. A person, a female, when she gets her first period or her first menstruation, that is at the time of puberty, is known as menarche. The first menstruation cycle of a female is known as menarche, and it starts by the time of puberty. Now, the female generally or most of the time once a month undergoes this menstrual cycle where her body prepares itself for accepting the fertilized egg, and if the egg is fertilized, it will get implanted in the uterus, it will get implanted in this thickened walls and will provide nourishment to the developing baby. But if no fertilization is there, then this newly formed tissues and blood vessels will be shed off. They will break down, they will shed off, and they will go out of the female body in the form of menstruation. Now, menstruation can last up to 4 to 8 days in general. So, it is an average period from 4 to 8 days usually it lasts in females, and when after menstruation cycle is complete, again new cell starts developing to become a mature egg, and again this uterine wall, if all these are shed, what happens when new egg development starts, again this endometrium or inner lining will start preparing itself, and again new blood vessels and tissues will form, so that if fertilization takes place, again they can be ready for it. Next is menopause. Menstruation we have discussed, menarche, first menstruation cycle in the life of a female, and when a female reaches the age of 45 to 50, then she stops having her menstrual cycle. She stops having her menstruation. So that is called menopause. When a female stops having menstruation, then it is called menopause. If she goes into menopause, the female is no longer will be viable or will be able to reproduce. Now we have to remember this whole menstruation cycle are actually controlled by hormones. They are controlled by mainly these 4 hormones. Luteinizing hormone, also can be written in short as LH. Follicle stimulating hormone can be written as FSH. Estrogen and progesterone. These 4 hormones play a major role in the controlling of menstrual cycle. Here you remember, luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone are secreted by the anterior pituitary gland, while estrogen and progesterone are secreted by the ovary. So here we have discussed the menstrual cycle and how the control takes place, what controls it, and these various phases in the reproductive phase of female. In the next video, we will discuss some more topics of this chapter. Thank you.